We teach people how to treat us. People know who to mess with, and people know who not to mess with. Thinking out loud, I asked myself, when's the last time you heard someone use the K word towards the Jewish community? When is the last time you've heard a Jewish person use the K word? But you hear people using the N word whenever they want. I mean, even the president hints to it without any fear of repercussions from those who would find it offensive. Why is that? When is the last time? I mean, we teach people how to treat us. And we teach people how not to treat us. If we're going to disrespect ourselves, we can't expect other people to respect us. We taught people how to treat us by forcing a Civil Rights Act, by forcing an affirmative action. We know how to teach people how to treat us. I don't know. This has nothing to do with what I'm going to be talking about today, really, but it was just on my mind. So I just wanted to say that. But of course, that's no way to start a show. So I'll start over and I will be right back. Well, hello, and welcome to In Your Ear Radio. I am your host, Latoya. As always, I'm so very happy to be present with you on this beautiful Saturday. I think it's like in the high 60s, low 70s. Nice. It's nice. It's nice out here in Vegas. I hope it's nice where you are. I know some of you may be experiencing snow or colder weather. Some of y'all like that cold weather. I like it in between. This is fine. I can still rock my boots, throw on a hoodie as I got on, which says that I am a math person with the not crossed out. Shout out to Math and More and Dr. Robles, who, along with his team, tutors our children. Thank you so much for that, especially with math. I think a lot of people do struggle with math. There's a fear factor in a lot of us. I think we were conditioned to not understand math, and I think they're doing even a better job at kind of deterring kids from wanting to learn math because they're making it so confusing to learn. When I was a kid, it was just simple timetables and simple formulas to help you understand how to use math. So I feel bad for that, but that's the society we live in today. And I do think that it's all intentional, the things that they do to dumb us down. So it's unfortunate. But yeah, so thank you all for joining me. Your presence is my present on YouTube and Facebook. You guys interact, chat, let me know what you're thinking, what you're feeling. I do want to know. I am in your ear, so I want to know what's on your mind, okay? What are you guys doing for the holidays? You ready for Christmas? Y'all ready for the new year? You ready for Christmas? For me, I've said this over and over again. So most of you who watch me regularly or are familiar with me know that I'm not really big on holidays. Like I participate just because it's an opportunity to break bread and fellowship with my family and create new memories and share old ones. And so you can always sign me up for that, no matter what the situation may be. I'm pulling up when it comes to family. It brings me a lot of joy and it fills my cup. So I participate in that way, but you'll see no decorations. I'm not against it, but I just don't get festive. You don't see the Christmas tree and the lights and, I might cook a dinner, especially if I'm going to have company to humor my sweetie, of course, he likes a good holiday meal. But I don't really get into it. But again, I'm not against it. Okay. I'm not against it. But for you guys, I think people overall for me, it's because I don't think the holidays are, I think it's a game people play. And I understand that people, when they feed us lemons, we make lemonade. So maybe it is just to capitalize off of us and to make corporations rich. And we use it, like I said, as an opportunity to fellowship. But people go and spend a lot of money and go broke. And some people are really sad during the holidays because they can't go spend money and go broke. So that's the angle that I'm coming from. I just hate what it does to a lot of people. So that's my angle. But even with the holidays, you think about this being a celebration of Jesus, right? It's supposed to be Jesus's birthday. Now there's controversy behind that. I mean, I'm even learning that the months are mixed up. So right now, how we call this December is technically not really that time of the year. I don't know. Talk to the Asians. They got a different calendar too. But overall, they say that Jesus was born, I think I want to say in the summer, but because they wanted to celebrate the winter solstice, and like I said, going back to corporation, things of that sort, the conversation or the holiday was built around, making that money. So that's why we're here. And so if that's what it is, I don't see anything wrong with that. All the stories that I read about Jesus are great. I have nothing against Jesus. But my question is, why isn't anybody, I don't hear people talking about him. I see Santa Claus in the mall. I don't see a big old stuffed Jesus. You know what I'm saying? I don't see anything that represents Jesus during the holiday season. And so that's interesting to me, because you have a president who says, oh, they're trying to take the price out of Christmas because we say Xmas or happy holidays. But really, who's talking about Jesus? Like, even at your work potlucks, we have potlucks right at our jobs where we bring food around the holiday season. Around Christmas time, you see the decorations and the trees and the Christmas cookies, and everybody's festive, and there's a gift exchange, but there's no conversation about Jesus, not even a scripture anywhere. Like, it is a religious holiday. It's Christmas. It's about Christ. No matter how you try to shape it, it is a religious holiday. Shout out to E. Carice, who's giving me exclamations. Yeah, they still have potlucks. Now, do we eat at potlucks? If they're catered, because some people got cats and they claim their cats don't get on the counters, but who can stop a cat? Name one cat that ever been stopped from doing anything they wanted to do. But yeah, so they still have potlucks in the workplace. And then, of course, you have she said, ugh. Then, of course, you also have our family things, right? We have our family. I mean, we have an annual Christmas party with one side of my family, and it's always lovely. We do chicken and waffles. We put on pajamas, or we have ugly sweaters, lots of games, very interactive, kids, adults, cocktails, food. Do you guys have these get-togethers too, these Christmas parties? Are you just opening gifts and having libations, or are you talking about Jesus? Do you even talk about Jesus during your Christmas parties with your family? Shout out to my TT. Part of this tradition with our chicken and waffles, our annual, is she sits the babies down. We have a schedule of things we do, and one of them each year includes sitting the babies down. They, sit in a circle around TT, and she tells the story of the birth of Jesus. And so I just think that's a beautiful thing, because that's what the holiday is supposed to be about, right? Christmas. I'm not talking about Hanukkah. I'm not talking about Kwanzaa. I'm specifically talking about Christmas. That's celebrated on the 25th of December every year, right? So we do that. But do you guys do that at your family functions? And then, we have the ugly sweater contest in the workplace, right? We have the things like that. But why ain't nobody having a best dressed Jesus contest? It's about Jesus. It's his birthday. I mean, forget the fact that we're buying gifts for other people on Jesus's birthday. You know what I'm saying? Like, please. My cousin just had a birthday a couple of days ago. Can y'all run me a gift? I will accept. Honestly, I don't need anything, but I'm just making a point. But yeah, so why aren't we having a best dressed Jesus or best dressed Virgin Mary? You know what I'm saying? Why aren't we dressing the babies up like baby Jesus? Why are we having sweater contests instead? Just thinking out loud, just thinking out loud. And I've been accused of being a Grinch, and I used to tease myself and call myself that. But really, Grinch is more, when I say that, just a person like bah humbug, like I'm just not into it. You might consider me grumpy because everybody's running around buying gifts and being joyous. I'm joyous, but I'm not, that festive person. So I can tease and call myself the Grinch. But then knowing the story of Grinch, I don't think I remember seeing it as a kid, but I really can't really tell you much about him except that he was grumpy. But just looking at how he was described, I got to find a new name for me, because the Grinch, they say he's a misanthropic, whatever that is, but he's ill-natured, basically, and mean-tempered. Now, that's not me. Definitely not ill-natured and not mean-tempered. Now, I can get mean if my temper go there, but that's not who I am. I consider myself a pretty nice and kind person overall. But the Grinch, he was just that guy who secluded himself for like 50 something years. And and he really wasn't into all of the good things. He was mad about his height. He was mad, I guess, because he was green. Um, Notice people that are angry are usually green. Think about the Incredible Hulk, for example. You know what I'm saying? Incredible Hulk, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. And then he turned green. Well, the Grinch is green too. I'm just saying. I gotta look up that green thing. At least they ain't making an angry black person. Maybe an angry person could. Green is cool. It's neutral, right? None of us are naturally green. So it takes the race out of it. I like that. I like that. But anyways, yeah, so the Grinch is not really who I am. It's not descriptive of me, but the story of the Grinch is basically like he really went in when they started celebrating Christmas and everybody was jolly and he just didn't like it. So I can't tell you how the story ends. You know, in my mind, maybe he had a change of heart, but people use the Grinch to scare their babies nowadays, and that's wrong. Somebody call CPS. No, don't. But I'm just saying, why would you want to torture your baby like that? I don't understand that at all. But anyway, but yeah, I've been accused of being a Grinch. And like I said, I made that joke. I got pajamas with the Grinch on it because I'm that person who's not going to go out and buy gifts. I'll do a gift exchange if, that's what's going to keep the party pumping. But it's not necessary. We here all year. You know what I'm saying? I can celebrate you at any time. I don't have to take Jesus's birthday to go out and buy gifts and be a part of this whole, whatever this is, this whole consumerism thing they have going on. Shout out to E. Carice, who's also on Facebook, engaging me in the chat. I appreciate you, sis. She says, out of the country tradition with family for the end of the year review, some call Christmas. So out of the country is what she does. That's a tradition for her family, with the family, for the end of the year review. Okay, all right, the end of the year review. So that includes the new year, because we're going to include that too, because most people take 2 weeks off to just lump it all in, right? I get it. I think that's nice. Yeah, Christmas. That's what they call it. That's what it's called. And yeah, so we partake it in one way or the other, right? Even if we don't necessarily celebrate it under those terms, most of us partake in it in one way or another, in ways that I've described, E. Carice, and you guys can let me know in what way you celebrate it or don't celebrate it. You don't partake at all. I don't know. But anyways, I've been called the Grinch, and and Joy-Ann Reid is now being called the Grinch by some. If you guys haven't heard, she's been posting recently that just basically reposting another post from another man, a black gentleman, who was speaking about the song Jingle Bells. So I guess she's a Grinch too, right? Because she's saying bah humbug to Jingle Bells. She says it's a racist song, and she says it makes fun of black people. It was written by a Confederate soldier who they say abandoned his family to go fight against the war, to try to keep people to fight against the country, to keep people enslaved. And so he wrote a song, and he says they say that the song mimics black people laughing all the way. Is likely in reference to a racist comedic routine of the day known as Laughing Darky. I wasn't familiar with that, but they did blackface. People are so racist that they didn't even allow black people at some point to partake in their own, I guess, what word am I looking for? Being made fun of-ness. Okay, I make stuff up sometimes too, right? So, so they would put blackface on. If you think about any of these old movies, you guys, that you watch with the cowboy, the Westerns, there's so much history in that word cowboy, just thinking about thievery and what they take and just racism. Didn't belong to them. But anyway, staying on track, the people that they use that are supposed to be the Native Americans are white women or white men, and they put dark makeup on them, bronze them out or something. I'm like, really? Yeah, that's what we consider cultural appropriation, because you are trying to emulate something that you're not. And if you're not of the culture or from the culture, then how can you, truthfully and honestly represent it? Yeah. Listen, it's a lot. But anyway, so she's being called the Grinch because of the song. And it was patented back in 1859, the song Jingle Bells. And that was the name before the start of the Civil War at that point, which the video claimed to be, representing, the Christmas time or whatever, Christmas celebration. But yeah, this trending now that it's referencing some racist dog whistle language. Back then they didn't have to really hide what they were saying, and maybe if you were, I wouldn't see the racism in it because I didn't know there was a Laffy Darky Day. You know what I'm saying? So how would I find that to be offensive? But if you tell me it's offensive, and I know the history now, if you carolers come to my door and you start singing Jingle Bells, I'm gonna slam that door on you, like Q did on Friday to the Jehovah's Witnesses. That's how I'm gonna do you. Don't sing Jingle Bells at my door. Don't worry, I'll open my door anyway unless you invite it. So I ain't open my door anyway. But anyway, so yeah. But yeah, that's crazy. That is so crazy. Speaking of crazy, y'all. Speaking of crazy, your boy Elon, he's the man who owns X, formerly known as Twitter, which is probably what we still call it around here. He had a crazy tweet. You Everybody's entitled to their opinion, their perspective. We learn biology in school, and I understand that it's getting really confusing now. But all these different terms and languages, and people just calling themselves what they want to call themselves, and then we have to, rewire our brains to accept and unlearn what we were taught in school when it comes to the anatomy and biology. And so, it's it could be a thought provoking thing to say. But anyway, the tweet he said was he tweeted on his platform is that if you have a womb, then you are a woman. And if you don't have a womb, then you are not a woman. And I mean, in layman's terms, basically, I don't know where that came from. I didn't go back and try to go and do the research because I don't like that stuff to be part of my algorithms next. It's not, I didn't Google what he's talking about or, who he's pushing back at, because he could have just woke up out of sleep instead, or he could have been responding to someone. If you guys know, please feel free to share in the chat. I don't know what yeah, it was random, but thinking about what he said, and I'm thinking, yeah, that kind of is part of biology and the anatomy, how we define male versus female, right? By the anatomy, more so your cells, your DNA, is it chromosomes, the X and Y chromosome, X, things of that nature. So I was like, okay, I get you, but I think it should have went more so like if you, because I'm guessing when he says womb, he's referencing a uterus, because that's where the fetus is carried in the uterus. It's not carried in the cervix. It's not carried in the vagina. It's not carried in your stomach, which is right up below your chest, breast area. It's actually in the uterus. It's very low next to the vajayjay, your vagina. So the womb is the vagina. So, I'm thinking, yeah, so maybe he should have said, if you were born with a womb or uterus, then you're a woman. And if you weren't, then you're not. But then even that data is not factual, because once he said that, I was like, I think that's a good way to describe it, male and female, if you have a uterus or if you don't. Okay. Not that it has to be working, right? Because many people, even though they have a uterus, they may have still difficulty carrying a fetus. So this doesn't mean that you're not a woman; just means that you have whatever is going on with your body that's going on with it. But I did some research, and I come to find out, because I asked myself, I said, is every woman born with a womb, with a uterus? And the answer is no. According to research, there are between 5,000 to 7,000 infants born without a uterus that are considered girls, women, female. So I thought that was interesting. But I guess in some respects, that would be some level of birth defect, right? Some people come into the world with just one arm, no legs, deformities and things of that nature. So maybe this is on that level. Y'all, they call dimples a deformity, honestly. But I'm just saying, when we think about a whole human and what we classify as being normal in comparison to what isn't normal, it would be for most, and it's based on numbers, right? The majority of girl infants are born with their wombs, the uterus. So yeah, they're saying that between 5,000 to 7,000 infants are actually born without one. Because when I was doing the research, a lot of it was saying a woman with no uterus gets an implant, but really when you dug into the story, it was her uterus was not functioning properly, so she had a transplant. It wasn't that she wasn't born with one. So there's a difference when you're born and your uterus, with a uterus that doesn't allow you to carry a fetus to term, in comparison to not having a uterus at all. So that was a thought-provoking thing that I got from that, and I kind of did the research on it, and yeah. And they called that term, again, infants born without a uterus, Mayer Rokitansky Koster-Heiser syndrome. What the hell? Mayer Rokitansky Koster-Heiser syndrome. And that means you were born with no uterus or vagina, and no vagina. Y'all, so I didn't go down that rabbit hole to see if it was sold up, like closed up. I could imagine it could happen. Some people are born with no eyes, like so many things, just nothing I ever even considered. No vagina. I've seen the people who have both, born with both, and one's more functioning than the other, meaning you have the penis and the vagina, but no vagina. Like, damn, what a waste. But yeah, so that's what it is. And some of the things that come along with that, some of the symptoms and setbacks that you may have if you're born without a uterus, or is not having a vagina. That might be one of the things, but a lot of people who are born this way have kidney issues, spinal issues, just other issues with their bodies in association with that. So, Elon, okay, you got me going down a rabbit hole and I learned something new. So, a broken clock can be right at least twice a day. And I'll give you your props for giving me a reason to even want to do the research and correct you on what you were saying. So yeah, you can be born without a womb, Elon, and still be a woman in your classification based on anatomy and biology, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, did you guys watch anything interesting? I watched On the Come Up. If you guys haven't seen it, I think it's on Amazon. It had Mike Epps in there, Method Man, I think a few heavy hitters, but it was a good wholesome story. I sum it up. It's about a young girl who wants to be a rapper, and she's a conscious rapper, my type of people, you know what I'm saying? They come with that fire, it sounds violent because the way they're giving it to you, you just, but it's not violent. You don't hear them using the N-word per se. You don't hear them, disparaging men or the women themselves or talking about taking a life. But talking about still life experiences, right? Which can be violent sometimes. People experience things that, people don't want to talk about, but they put it in the song, like to hear it. And so that's what she was. And then she got with someone with a lot of money, and they kind of, want to change up her flavors so that she can get more popularity, which that did happen, but it brought along a lot of other things. So I like the moral of the story. And I sum it up as if Hallmark had a gangster movie, this would be it. Okay. Because, Hallmark is cheesy. It's kind of soft. But if they wanted to amp it up a little bit, because you don't see any actual violence, it's not, so if Hallmark had a gangster movie, I would say that's it. So, On the Come Up on Amazon. And I listened to Nas' new album. Yeah. DJ Premier produced it. I'm feeling it. I can be honest with you guys. When it comes to Nasir Jones, I'm just a number one fan in my eyes. He can do no wrong. So, but I have this thing with his music. There are a few bangers in there, like Off Top. I'm like, yeah, that's my thing. One of them was Junkie. And it was another one too. I can't remember the title off top. But those, when I first heard it, it's like, yeah. I have to listen to the lyrics because a lot of times the beat, the vibe is a little different. And so it's not, a lot of people get turned on by certain music, not necessarily about as to what people are saying, especially when it comes to hip hop, but the vibe, the beat, the flow. And so, with more of Nas's beats, a lot of them, he got some headbangers, but for the most part, I have to listen to it again. And, then I acclimate to the sound, but the lyrics is what draws me in, what he's actually talking about. So yeah, he's definitely in rotation. And good looking out. Happy birthday to anyone celebrating a birthday today. It's still Sagittarius season. Y'all do y'all thug thizzle. I think Nene's celebrating a birthday. If you guys don't know, that's the housewife. She turned 58, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't double check, but I did see a post that she was, that today was her birthday. So I could be wrong. And if I am, then I'm either early or late. So happy birthday anyway. And the same for Jamie Foxx. He's also 58, I guess. So if I'm wrong, then I'm either early or late. Happy birthday to you both. And again, to anyone celebrating right now. So I'm still celebrating y'all. Like, this is a big one for me. So I'm not really, people are still wishing me happy birthday on TikTok. And I'm still saying thank you. I'm not correcting them. I'm not letting them know. Like, listen, until the next one come along, we can just continue this on. It's an ongoing happy birthday thing situation for me. I'm good with it. Yeah. So, I want to get into so much. I definitely want to talk about, y'all's president. It's a lot going on, you guys. They trying to take away the civil rights. They trying to tear that down. Project One Way. I'm telling myself now. That's my show. I think they're in the 22nd season of Project One Way. If you guys don't know that show, that's where people who make clothes, fashion designers, they're just put on the spot to make clothes in a matter of hours and competitions. Oh, I love it. I can't sew, wouldn't want to sew, but I love to see people create, especially when it comes to fashion. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Project 2025. So they're like 50% done. The year isn't even up. This man hasn't even been president for an entire year yet. Y'all know he became president in January, officially. But he has not even been in office for an entire year, and we're 50% through with Project Runway. And people tried to press it, let people know that did I say Project Runway again? Project 2025. And the season is over. So I need to just get it out the back of my mind. Are they going to have a reunion? Anyway, Project 2025 is what I'm talking about. So if you hear me say Project Runway, just remember that's not what I mean. Project 2025 is 50% done. And a lot of us tried to warn folks that this was going to affect civil rights. This was going to affect employment. This was going to affect diversity, equity, and inclusion, affirmative action. This was going to affect everything, anything that matters, education, women's rights to autonomy. This was going to affect, just to name something, everything that's, important to us that was going to affect. And so it's all in effect, and it happened rapidly. It'll be nice when this man is out of office so that we can try to undo a lot of this stuff. And then some stuff will just stay away, because I think some of this stuff does need to stay away. But not in the sense that they have it, but reinventing it, not bringing back the same broken stuff. It was already broken and it wasn't working. So now we're back in that do for self mode. We understand that ain't nobody coming to get us. A lot of us already knew that, but for those who didn't understand that, ain't nobody coming to get us, they know now. And so they're, we're working to, find our own educational system separate from taxpayer dollars, find our own institutions and ways to communicate with people like an Underground Railroad, having Black businesses and supporting small and Black businesses more so, growing gardens and finding independent ways to have income and things of that nature. So this is what's brought about. This is what's spun up. And it's opened a lot of people's eyes to the political realm. And so people are starting to understand politics more, and they're paying attention, which is important. And as I say that, let me shout out Jasmine Crockett, okay, who's running for Senate. And, I love the way she explains herself and breaks things down, because we get an understanding of it. Because I know a lot of people who support her are kind of like nervous about the fact that she's running for Senate, because we haven't had many. I think it's maybe 14 historically Black senators. Currently, I think we have 9. Currently, there may be 9 active, or we've had, I don't know, not even 9, 5 maybe in the Senate. I know there's Cory Booker, Tim Scott, Raphael Warnock, Also Brooks, Angela Also Brooks. We have Barack Obama. He did 1 term, if I'm not mistaken, and then became president. Vice President Harris, she did her term and then became vice president. So we haven't had a lot of Black senators. And so we know how hard it is to become senator, which is a very, very important role in this 3 branches of government. And more so for Texas, because Texas has never had a Black senator and a Black woman, of course. And so that would flip the state. And it's important, not just for Texas, but it's important to our democracy, because, her having that seat is going to help flip the House, which means that next time the Congress, if we have control over the Congress and the Congress impeaches y'all's president and it goes to the Senate and they vote to impeach and then they vote to prosecute, they have enough Democratic votes, because it's only the Democrats who really care to see people be held accountable at this point, or at least him in this, in this respect. We would have that vote to be able to have him charged as a criminal, not just have a record, but also be held accountable by way of, now he's a lame duck president. When you lame duck, meaning that he technically cannot run for office again because you only get 2 terms. But you just never know. We got to cover our bases, because you got weirdos walking around with Trump 2028. You got, they just skip civics, y'all. Or they really, really like the fact of being under a dictatorship and not having a democracy. Like, they want to be ran and told what to do and not have any control over who's in a position of power that affects their life. It could be one or the other. They could just be really dumb or not. But yeah, Jasmine Crockett is doing her thing, and she's doing it well. And she's standing up and pushing back to a lot of the stuff that people are saying, because the other side comes with the rhetoric. They will lie to kick it. Okay, they will definitely lie, and they've done it over and over again. We talked about the last election where all they did was flood people with homophobia and fear of immigration, immigrants taking their jobs, and deter people away from the reality of what a Republican regime would look like, and got people voting against their interests or not voting at all. And so that's what they do. That's their playbook. It hasn't changed. It's called the Southern Strategy. You can go look it up. They never deviate from it. It's effective. So why would they? If it ain't broke, why fix it? But you have someone who understands what they're doing. She knows their game. And so she stays ahead of them. And, you got people saying, oh, she took APAC money and she taking APAC money. That's a lie. But if you guys don't know APAC, that's AIPAC, stands for American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And that's where, they put a lot of money into these politicians, which they need that money. They need that money to travel. For her, security would be one of the reasons why she would need money. They need it for promotional purposes and all of that, for staff and all of those things in order, to stay relevant and be in your face. They need that money. I don't think they need that. There should be caps on the money. But AIPAC is one of those people who one of those organizations or committees that pours into politicians. And so politicians become their bitch. Now you're their bitch. But she has told the people, she said, nah, son, I ain't part of that. That's not what I am. But that's what's trending right now. So I need you guys to focus on that. Because if I see one Black person, and I'm talking to Black people in particular and Black men, because I didn't see y'all on social media. Oh, what about policy? I was talking about the Vice President, Kamala Harris. Oh, she locked up all these men, not going to do the research, not even understanding she wasn't even in position to arrest people, what they were accusing her of, or lock them up. Just not knowing and just repeating things. I remember even somebody having said, I lived in California. I know she locked up people. Just because you live there, now I know you dumb. Because when I did the knowledge, even under her, in a position where she was able to, lock people up, it was under 2,000, and it was just none of it lined up, is what I'm saying. And so I just want to reiterate to you guys that don't get caught up in this stuff. But she's she got her pushback, and shout out to her talking about the propaganda and saying why she's running for Senate, which is what I wanted to really push on, is because they gerrymandered her out of where her constituents were. So they gerrymandered her out of her area illegally. Okay. First of all, what gerrymandering is, it's just a manipulation of electoral district boundaries. So, and it's done to make, an advantage to a party or group, so that they can have a certain constituents in their jurisdiction, so they have a higher probability of winning if they're running for office. And so she had her constituents, you know what I'm saying? She had her people, and of course they definitely would have voted her back in for a second term. Is this her junior? I can't remember. This would be I can't remember. But anyway, I think want to say she's a sophomore, not a freshman, but I could be wrong. My memory doesn't serve me too well right now. But I'm sure they would have voted her back into Congress. So I remember listening to her interview, and she said if the Supreme Court pushes back and says no, you have to bring the ungerrymander this area, then she would have stayed in her district and ran for her seat again in Congress. But a Trump Supreme Court supported them illegally, which it is illegal to gerrymander their area. They supported that. So now her constituents have been drawn out of that area. And so again, with this, normally they redraw districts based on population. So this is based on a census count. So every 10 years we have a census count. When people start knocking at your door, you get these letters in the mail. They want to know how many people are in your home. All of this is done. And I'm trying to see if you're an immigrant, or if you have welfare fraud, or you got a felony. They're just trying to see how many people live in an area, so that they can determine how many more schools they need, how many more grocery stores they need, how many more libraries they need, and if your area is being represented properly with political representation. And so they do that every 10 years. And you guys know we just had one, maybe was it 2 years ago? We just had a census. So it wasn't time. So they just went in and done this under the duress of, and I just say that because you only do it if you want to do it. But they did this because their president, their Lord and Savior, told them, start gerrymandering, get her out of here. She's a problem, okay? And we're going to talk about more things that are a problem, but that our government does to good people who are trying to keep people in check, who are trying to, just be racist and take us down. Shout out to Shanta Jackson. I see you. Hi. She says, hey, in your ear radio. Thank you for joining me in the chat. I hope that you will chime in on the discussion as well. But yeah, so that's why she's running for Senate, because now she's been gerrymandered out of her district, and she did the numbers, and she believes that she has a chance. And I believe she has a chance too. And so for those of you who, 2020, you're right, 2020, thank you, Shanta, was the last census. So that was 5 years ago. Wow, time flies, doesn't it? Yeah, because it was during the pandemic. That was crazy. Yeah. So it wasn't time for wasn't time for a census. So they just cut in, breaking rules, breaking laws, and a Supreme Court supported that. This is really, really creepy, y'all. But yeah, so that's why she's running for Senate now. And she's also saying, no, I'm not taking AIPAC money. But people are saying that because they want people to do what they did last time, which was vote against their interests, not vote for Vice President Harris because, she's supporting the Israeli war, and okay, in this case, that's not it. And yeah, that's not what she's doing. So don't let that be the reason. Just say you don't like the way she dressed, you don't like her hair. Don't make up shit. Make it truthful. But yeah, this is what she had to say, pushing back on people who always got something to say and don't know what they're talking about. You guys can't believe the propaganda and listen to the rhetoric. Go do the research and find the facts.
What about the criticism, one more? The criticism where some people have said, I know you've seen it on social media, where people are saying that some of them aren't going to vote for you because of this pro-Israel stance. What do you have to say about that?
What I have to say is that people need to start to do their research and stop falling for the clickbait. Listen, if you loved me before, then what has changed? You can always look at my voting record and know what it is that I have and haven't voted for. But it's quite intellectually lazy if you just sit there and let somebody else tell you something and you don't go and get the full picture. You can always look at my FEC filings and find whatever information it is that you seek. So what I will tell you is that I'm not going to be distracted, because at the end of the day, I can tell you that Texans are concerned about the fact that we lead in uninsured in this country. I can tell you that Texans are concerned because right now jobs are few. I can tell you that Texans are concerned because they can't afford childcare. I can tell you that Texans are concerned because hospitals are about to close down. And if you have questions, then you should just go and look at my record. I have nothing to hide. I wouldn't be running for office if I had anything to hide. But what I'm not going to do is allow people to sit here and have me on the defensive about something that they don't even know what they're talking about, because it is very easy to look up who is endorsed by who and to figure that out. That is intellectually lazy for you not to just go and look who has been endorsed.
I know you're fucking
Candace Boogie. Simple as that. Don't be intellectually lazy. I did have a website. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but I did have a website here that you can go to see exactly who are the donors to all of the political people in political seats. Who are the donors to these representatives? So you can know for yourself. Not just don't just let people tell you that. If they do, say, "Oh, word," and then go find out for yourself. Okay, go find out for yourself, and then So and Shanta saying, she said, I agree. That she doesn't need to be on the defense. It's misinformation versus disinformation. Exactly. And this falls under disinformation. They are intentionally giving this information to the public because they want you to believe that. And even if you don't know, you think you're getting that from a trusted source, and that's an excuse enough to say, oh no, I'm not going to support her. And so that's what people do. So anyways, to support Jasmine Crockett, even if you're not in her state, because remember, as I explained, that her having that seat is important to the country. It's important to the country so we can start holding people accountable and get bills passed that matter to us, because we know that Jasmine is for us. And you can go to her website, jasmineforus.com, and donate. Again, you don't have to be a constituent of hers. You don't have to live in the state. You can still support her. Mind you, she had to get security because they hate to see a Black woman that's intelligent. He think he hurting her feelings by calling her low IQ, and I'm talking about y'all's president, but really he's not. I mean, come on. Yeah, he just speaking to his poorly educated people who will believe and listen to and support any of the nastiness that comes out of his mouth. But yeah, go to Jasmine for us, and then you can be of support to her. Speaking of holidays, y'all, so y'all know, this is why I can't really have a conversation with people or empathize with people who literally, I mean, it's one thing that you didn't vote, but if you actually voted for this man, I got a problem with you, because, if you know he's racist and you support a racist. Like, I got a problem with that. He tells you every day how he's racist, how racist he is, even though he said back in his first term he was the least racist. Either you racist or you're not. You ain't a little pregnant. You either pregnant or you're not. Okay, but he's telling people, "Oh, I'm the least racist." Least of who? Hitler? Who? You know? But yeah, so he just took away the free entry to national parks. That's for certain days, just particular days. And one of those, both of those, I will say, are for Black holidays. Martin Luther King Day and Juneteenth. They will no longer be free to Americans to visit these public parks on these holidays, Juneteenth and Martin Luther King Day. So yeah, and not only did he do that, he then turned around and said, we will give free admission, however, to his birthday. That lands on Flag Day, and I want to say that's June 14th. So Flag Day, which is not a holiday, will be a free day for Americans because it falls on his birthday. So on his birthday, he's allowing you to go free. But why would you take away Martin Luther King Day and Juneteenth? What are you mad about? What do you have against people being free from slavery? What do you have against a leader who made sure that all men, women, all creeds and colors have rights that are protected? What do you have against that? What do you have against that? Like, people show you who they are. If you guys can't see that and you're still supporting him, or you're not shameful of your vote, or you went and voted again or for the first time, like, this is all things he said and done. And yeah, it's crazy. But this is what he's doing. And they said this is a move and his target against diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. So his argument is DEI to let people in the parks for free on a holiday that celebrates people who got their freedom. They were no longer forced to work without pay and be raped and beaten and for their lifetime. That's what chattel slavery is. I know a lot of people like to compare it to slavery in other areas of the world. Chattel slavery is its own beast. Some people were slaves until they paid off their debt, kind of like with credit cards. Maybe you might be a slave to Visa until you pay them off, and they're going to keep taxing you with interest. But at some point, you can be free. But under chattel slavery, you were never going to be free until 1865, when there was an amendment that allowed for that. Okay. And then slavery still does exist, you guys. Under the 13th Amendment, it's a form of punishment. So if you go to prison, they can do what they want to do to you. You know what I'm saying? So people complain about getting 2 cents an hour in prison. Look, you better go read that 13th Amendment, though. They better go read it. And the corporations are profiting off that because they're charging people, I don't know, what is it now? $5? I don't know what the cost is, but a whole lot of money to talk to people per minute in these prisons. And the people that are running certain parts of the organization are incarcerated and they're not getting paid. Look at it however you want to, but it's affecting the working man all the way around. These corporations are, they making out. And then he's going to go under his America First promise. He's going to charge foreigners, tourists, people that aren't from the country that come to visit these national parks, $100. I think it's been quoted as $100 fee. I'm not really sure how much it costs. I know each park, the prices may vary, but $100, okay, to go to a national park if you are not from this country. Mind you guys, these national parks are funded by taxpayer dollars. So we're already paying for these things, okay? We are, shout out to the stadium, the Raider Stadium. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're already paying for these things. Then we turn around and have to pay more. It's kind of like back to the point when I say we go to restaurants. We're already paying for the food. We're paying in some cases, if you're downtown, you're paying for parking. And now you got to pay the employee for their wages because they don't make a livable wage. They depend on tips. So they just getting us all the way around. Right, left. You're toothless. And I say, God damn, they ruthless. I do. I believe they're ruthless. But anyway, this is some mess. So for anybody who doesn't think this man isn't racist, I can't even have a conversation with you. I cannot have a conversation with you. There's a lot of pushbacks and it's the Flag Day. Why not? But you're not talking about the fact that he took away 2 holidays that represent freedom, justice, and equality. That represent that. What do you have against freedom and civil rights? That's all I'm saying. What do you have against it to take away free entry on these days? And mind you, I've never done it. So gone to a park on a holiday with free entry because I'm just not a big park person. It's just we happen to go as a family reunion or an outing, but not necessarily because it's a holiday. But anyway, there's a former secretary under the Obama administration. His name is Richard Stengel, and he said in a post responding to this that just note, he says, other than canceling 2 holidays that are important to Black Americans as national park days, the only other country that has their current leader's birthday as a national holiday is North Korea. So you've heard the stories. People are saying, this man told you, y'all's president told you that he would like to be dictator for a day. Again, let that critically think about what he's saying. If he's saying he wants to be dictator for a day, that's all he needs. The day he becomes dictator, it won't stop until they pull him out of office. And that's by force, not by choice, not by votes, because you don't get a vote. Okay. So he loves people like Hitler, Andrew Jackson, who defied the laws, even back when, they were, he was supposed to give land to the Native Americans, fertile land. He pushed them off into a land where there wasn't fertile land, so they couldn't grow their crops properly, and sent them on their merry little way with smallpox blankets. So these are the kind of people, these are the posters he got on his wall in his bedroom. Okay. Putin, things like that. People who are in authoritarian positions who, you see how he does. He'll bomb you without due process in the middle of international water, and he don't care who you run and go tell. Who's gonna check him, boo? This is what's happening. Meanwhile, there's a lot of erasure. He wants to put back up Confederate statues and take down anything that has a name that supports the greatness, the black excellence that we've contributed to this country. He's doing that. I'm not making it up. It's not only saying it; he's actually doing this. But just so you guys know, some of the days where you can get in free still in 2026 at national parks is on President's Day, Memorial Day, Flag Day, anyway, Independence Day. Yeah, was that always, I think they just threw that in. 110th birthday of the National Park Service, so they celebrate that as too, because National Park Service has been around 110 years now. Constitution Day and Theodore Roosevelt's birthday and Veterans Day. So there are some days you can still go. None of them for this year. So next year, the first one will be February 16th. If you want to go to maybe even your local area, you can go to the local park and get in for free on those days. So Lord child, I'm telling you, he's such a contradiction, As you guys know, I didn't touch on this last week. It was me and Miss Trish. We was having a conversation. Also, I just want to make a note, you guys, I will not be here next week because I will be, celebrating with my family, celebrating Jesus' birthday, watching other people get gifts. I'm just saying. But so I didn't get a chance to talk about this last week. And so I wanted to mention, which I'm sure many of you know, that y'all's president, 34 felony count having, who says that he thinks that all drug dealers should get the death penalty. And he is, again, showing and proving without due process that they're actually drug dealers, killing people in international waters and accusing them of being drug dealers, actually pardoned a drug dealer. Okay, a big one, a big one, who was actually the former president in Honduras. So he did this recently, if you guys aren't aware. December 2nd, I want to say. Yeah, December 2nd, he was released from the USP Hazelton prison in Preston County, West Virginia. And his name is, what is his name? Hernandez? Yeah, he's Hernandez. So he served as president in Honduras from 2014 to 2022, and he was arrested shortly after leaving office. He was extradited to the U.S. the same year he was arrested in 2022. And he was convicted in March of 2024 after a jury trial and sentenced in 2024. Sentenced to 45 years in prison under the former President Joe Biden's Justice Department for conspiring to traffic over 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. Okay. He was released again, just December 2nd. So he didn't even serve that much time. He was just, a little over a year, June 2024, just about a year and a half, maybe. Yeah. And so, but the current Honduran president has issued an international arrest warrant for him, stating that, they want him to be extradited and arrested. They say that he was a drug dealer and he needs to be held accountable. And so that means he could be arrested no matter where he goes, except here, because the Trump's Department of Justice likely won't cooperate with international arrest warrant. So they won't be extraditing Hernandez. But there is an international arrest warrant for him. So Hernandez, again, I bring this up just to say that there, some people do want to see him held accountable, even though you have a president who just relinquished him of any wrongdoing. And he basically said that he asked him if he said that they only did this because he was president, that it was a conspiracy, that yeah, that's the only reason why he was arrested. And he said he was not guilty. And so he believed him and let him go. Yeah. It's crazy when I think about this whole drug thing. I was talking to somebody who I guess, was just speaking from his underworld experience, a friend of a friend, but he, we were talking about just this whole war on drug things. You guys remember Iran Contra, you remember how, it's always been, some type of issue with drugs, and they try to make us think that they are against it. And I remember this guy saying that, he said when the Republicans are in office, when they have the majority office position, when they don't drug prices. I'm talking about the underworld again. Drug prices are lower when Republicans are in office, and when Democrats have the majority, drug prices go higher. And the explanation was that Democrats are harder on drug trafficking than Republicans because, again, mentioning Iran Contra, remember the whole Nicaraguan thing where they were allowing Nicaraguans to smuggle drugs into the United States and then pouring them into our communities. And then there were these 3-strike laws, so where they were arresting our people and people got hooked on these drugs. And they were, but they were bringing these drugs in. They were bringing these drugs in, allowing them to smuggle them in for cash. And they were giving them money so that they can buy weapons because they were helping, the Nicaraguans were helping to support a war that they wanted to go on. And that was what with Iran, right? And so, it's just crazy. It's just crazy when you think about it. They have us thinking one thing like, hey, we're against drugs, but really they use it as an excuse to do their dirt. They use it as an excuse to do their dirt. And again, these people, no matter what they say on the other side, they are not for us. They are for themselves. They're going to say what they need to say to us so that they can get us to look the other way or to think that they are good people, but they are not for us, because while they're telling us that they don't support certain things, they're doing them. They're doing them. And so I just want to remind you guys not to fall for the okie doke. Today also, there's a Nazi gala, y'all. I bring all this up, and I'm going to get into this more, but let me go back to the story of, my goodness, it's just so much to talk about. But I want to go into this story of foreigners being required to give 5 years of their social media activity. And I bring that up just to tie that into the hypocrisy, right? Because they say it's America first, and they're trying to protect the security of the U.S. So, people on the other side, the MAGAs, the Republicans, or whoever these people are that support whatever comes out of these people's mouths that have a majority vote right now, they're saying, yeah, that's what you do. That make sure no terrorists are coming over here. Make sure that these people aren't, if they don't like our country, they got something negative to say, that they ain't coming over here. That's the whole point of having a democracy, for even that person to be able to talk negatively of Democrats or whoever, people, Black people, Asians. That's the whole point. So that's the overall thing. It's not, you can say what you want to say. It's about what you do. But all of a sudden now, again, focusing on immigration, keeping us focused on immigration and thinking, oh, they're supporting us. Meanwhile, you're bringing in white Africans, right? You want Norway, white people to come over here, but you don't want a lot of these brown countries over to be able to travel here. I mean, you got to really pay attention to what you're seeing and hearing and what they're saying. Yes, I'm about to talk about that. I'm reading the chat, y'all, right now. Yeah, Shanta saying, I'm waiting for you to bring up the annual gathering of white supremacist neo-Nazis. Yeah, that's in New York, hate groups. It's in New York, in the Tennessee and the American Renaissance Conference. Okay. I thought it was in New York. Maybe it's a different one you're talking about. But yeah, I'm getting into that. But I wanted to just build up to this. And I'm talking fast, y'all, because I like to just give y'all 90 minutes. And I have so much that I want to talk about. And I think all of this is informative and just, just some breadcrumbs for you guys to really think about what's going on around us and the hypocrisy, and just to keep you focused on why it's so important to vote and to be engaged and to be vigilant and not be bamboozled, hoodwinked, and ran them up or led astray. Like, we really, really have to focus, because they are trying to just take over and take everything away from us and keep us distracted by us thinking they're doing something positive. So anyway, so what they're doing now is foreign tourists to the US could be required to disclose the past 5 years of their social media activity if a Tuesday rule opposed by Customs and Border Protection is approved. So it goes on to say, in order to comply with the January 2025 executive order, that's 14161, it's protecting the United States from foreign terrorists and other national security and public safety threats. The CBP, again, that's the CBP is adding social media as a mandatory data element for the electronic system for travel authorization. So basically, the data element will require that people who are applying to come into the country have to provide social media from the past 5 years. Travelers from 42 countries eligible for the visa waiver program would be impacted by the proposal, which aims to collect baseline biographic data through the addition of several high-value data fields. So visitors could be asked to provide their telephone numbers used in the past 5 years, email addresses used in the past 10 years, in addition to IP addresses and metadata from electronically submitted photos. Okay, so they're going to be following your public, whatever comments you made and all this stuff. So, yeah, so the public, just so you guys know, the public comment on the proposal will remain open for 60 days. So that was just reported on December 10th. So if you want to push back, if you don't like this, I can't imagine some of you might like it, but yeah, you got to remember this kind of stuff will affect us citizens too. Next thing you know, to get back into the country, we might have to do the same thing. So we're traveling abroad and we come back, we might be affected too. If none of us is free, if they ain't free, we ain't free. If one person isn't free, none of us are free. So that's the thing that we were that we have to focus on. We're just thinking about, oh yeah, immigrants, they should have to do that. Yeah, but look what happens when we start looking the other way. Yeah, immigrants, yeah, we want to lock up immigrants if they here undocumented. But look who's getting chased around now. Like we tried to tell y'all, it ain't gonna just be undocumented people. Any brown-skinned person is being racially profiled. They're not going to no Irish restaurants. They're not going to any Irish communities, even though New York has majority Irish immigrants there. They're not looking for Irish. When's the last time you seen an Irish man or woman or child be terrorized by ICE? So even with this, them pressing them for their IP addresses, 5 years of their telephone number, social media information, all of this, email addresses, this is us next. What makes you think if they can do it to them, they can do it to us? Especially if we agree to it, we cheering it on, then wow, it'll be okay for us too, right? So that's how we have to look at this. Currently eligible foreign tourists are allowed to visit for 90 days without a visa, as long as they first obtain the $40 electronic travel authorization. So imagine you're only going to be here for 90 days, or you're coming here for school or whatnot, and now you have to provide all of this information. It's definitely going to deter you from coming here. If that's what they're trying to do, they'll be successful. But unfortunately, or fortunately, a lot of our productivity is built on immigrants. And at the same time, this man is saying how we don't have the education, that we have to pull from other countries for certain careers. Like nothing makes sense, y'all. Nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. Even in March, there was a French academic who was denied entry before being deported back to Europe for posting messages critical of Trump's administration's research policies. Okay. So I don't think they're going to go after anybody if they're dogging out the former Vice President Kamala Harris, Obama, Biden. I don't think they're going to be mad about that. But if you're saying anything negative towards Trump or his administration, that's what the issue is. That's not democracy. Remember we were saying that democracy was on the line. Democracy was on the line. That's not democracy. And they're doing this all in the name of protecting us from terrorism. This is what they're saying. Meanwhile, the KKK is still not classified as a terrorist organization, okay, which was actually established after the 1865 when those who were enslaved were free. They decided they were going to bully and torture freed people and scare them. And they've been around, and they're not being surveilled. They're not considered a terrorist organization. While the Black Panther Party was classified by the FBI as the most dangerous threat to the U.S., before they neutralized them. And we know how they were neutralized when they brought drugs into the community, right? When they flooded our communities with drugs, got us off the street, had some of our family members just destroyed by drugs in more ways than one. Not just those who ingested it, but those who had to live with people who were affected by the actual ingestion of the drug, incarceration, all of those things, okay? And now they're talking about Antifa. And I still didn't get Antifa, but here's the thing. They're going after Antifa. Like I said, they're not going after the KKK. They're not going after the domestic terrorists. Who they consider domestic terrorists are people who oppose what they're doing, people who are resisting and are not obeying and agreeing to what is happening right now. So you even have people, they're going after Antifa. There was this whole, what do you call it when they have these big meetings and they talking to the head of the FBI and they were asking him, like, give us the details. You're all saying that Antifa is the biggest threat to the United States right now. Like, that is what they're keeping their eye on. So they're being asked by Congress, like, what are the numbers? How many of these people are they? Where they live? Where are they occupying? What is, give us information. And they didn't have any details. As a matter of fact, I'll play a little bit of the conversation that they were having when they were talking about Antifa, not the KKK. You know, the real domestic terrorists, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, so they were having this conversation, you know, because they're trying to, you know, basically rationalize going after Antifa, and they're not telling us who they are. So anybody could be that as far as they're concerned. But just so you know, Antifa, that's is considered it dates back to the 1920s and 1930s. It's you know, bred out of Europe, and it, you know, basically they oppose neo-Nazis, neo-fascism, white supremacists, and racism. And they basically go in to disrupt these types of movements. So when I get into the conversation today that there's an actual Nazi rally going on in New York, if I'm not mistaken, today, it could be happening right now, or it could have happened earlier or maybe later, but it is today. And you know, they would go to places like this and disrupt it. Basically, they would protest against, which is our right under the current democracy we have, which is slowly being chipped away from it. But yes, they oppose these things. They come from a variety of political backgrounds, but they were united in their opposition to fascism, and they have an anti-government streak. And they are, they see the creeping authoritarianism in the current American administration that they are looking to build. They see this. They said the movement that really insulates us from the policies of y'all's president. It says it's not just resisting the federal administration, but also resisting moves that can lead to fascism. This is what one member is saying. And those happen locally, whether from local officials or from the local alt-right movements. We see that. We see that these people are in seats. Everything I talked about is part of this, you know, just the gerrymandering, all of this is part of it. But this was a question asked about Antifa to a head of FBI. They're just trying to get some data on how big of a threat and why are they a threat and who are these people and where are they? And this was his response.
So where is Antifa headquartered?
Where are the Antifa headquarters?
What we're doing right now with the organization.
Where in the United States does Antifa exist? If it's a terrorist organization and you've identified it as number one.
We are building out the infrastructure right now.
So what does that mean? We're trying to get the information. You say Antifa is a terrorist organization. Tell us as a committee, how did you come to that? Where do they exist? How many members do they have in the United States as of right now?
Well, that's very fluid. It's ongoing for us to understand that. The same, no different than Al Qaeda and ISIS.
No, I don't want you. I'll ask one question, sir. I just want you to tell us. If you said Antifa is the number one domestic terrorist organization operating in the United States, I just need to know where they are, how many people. I don't want a name. I don't want anything like that. Just how many people have you identified with the FBI that Antifa is made of?
Well, the investigations are active.
Sir, you wouldn't come to this committee and say something you can't prove. I know you wouldn't do that.
But he did. These are the people. So they get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion. They say because it's racist that people shouldn't be hired based on the color of their skin, and that's not what it's based on. Because even in these positions, basically, it's us, saying, you ain't got to like me, but you will respect me. So that's why you have the civil rights. That's why you have affirmative action and things of that nature. Because it was prior to that, people were just doing what they want to do. They were refusing service to people, refusing jobs, refusing things that we need, just like any other red-blooded human being would need in order to maintain. And so laws had to be put into place, and now they're chipping away at these laws. And when we were put in these positions, because they had to have at least a certain number of us in these positions, we had to be the best of the best. And so now they're getting rid of the best of the best, and they're replacing them with the worst of the worst. Like they don't even try to pretend like they know what they're talking about. He didn't even try to lie to kick it. He was just like, oh, it's an ongoing. What the hell? Jesus. I mean, it's certain jobs you have to have a certain level of experience or education to work at an entry level job. And here you got people in the top position, and they don't have any education. They don't have any experience. They don't even care to even appear that they know what the hell they doing or talking about. Really, really crazy. And so, the point I'm making is all of this, you have a leadership that's really, really doing their best to, they've done their job of dividing the country, but they're doing their best to keep their whiteness as a supreme position. They want to rule over everybody and have positions of power and not allow power to be held by anyone else. They don't want anyone else to have that power. Why aren't y'all going to this Nazi gala in New York today? So it's called the New York Young Republicans Club Gala, and it will recognize a guy named Marcus Frohnmayer. He's a political leader from the Alternative for Germany party, who just 8 weeks ago, they were disbanded over a group chat which members praised Adolf Hitler. This is what they would. You know what I'm saying? A man who put Jewish people in gas chambers. Okay. So anyways, they're pushing, they push for anti-immigrant and anti-Muslim ideas and policies. They also use tactics straight from Germany's Nazi era. This is what they do, including anti-Semitic actions by its members and use of Nazi slogans. So this is what they're doing. I wonder, are they being surveilled and watched, okay, today? So Germany's Federal Office for Protection of the Constitution, that's the country's domestic intelligence agency, has labeled them in Germany. They have labeled them as extremists. They call them AfD extremists, okay? So unlike our country, where we have domestic terrorists under KKK, the Proud Boys, and things of that nature, who are not considered a threat to, domestic security, Germany identifies these people who are now in our country having a rally as a threat. And they say that the party holds ethnic, racial conceptions of German people that violates core tenets of the country's democratic order from the Alternative of Germany party. In Germany, you cannot have statues of Hitler around. In the United States, you can have statues of confederacies around. These are people who went against the country. You can have naval bases named for them, even though they went against their army, they went against their military, their naval bases, their military bases, I'll say, named for them, for people who went against the military to keep slavery. You have schools named for these people. But yeah, in Germany, no, we will not. They are not with the celebration of Hitler. You're not going to see any statues of Hitler or people being allowed to publicly support him. And whatever his thing was, but here it's totally different. It's so weird. But at the same time, you so America first, and you're against domestic terrorism and outside terrorism. But here you have people who are actually terrorists, who are terrorizing the citizens of the United States, and you're doing nothing about it unless they're trying to stop people from taking away their rights, and then they become a threat, like the Black Panther Party, like I don't really want to say too much about Antifa because I don't know enough about them, but based on that description, that might be it. And, because they throw everybody in that whole thing, Black Lives Matter and all those people who just want to have freedom, justice, and equality and be treated fairly and not be racially profiled unjustly caged up in jails and prisons, murdered. The list is long of things that we are asking that people not do to us. Those are the people who will consider a direct threat per the FBI. So I just wanted to touch on that and give my 2 cents on that. But I want to circle back. To a conversation we had last week that I was trying to build on, and just touch on that some more. But right before I do that, I also want you guys to know that in order to get a job as a federal worker working under the Trump administration, you have to pledge allegiance to the administration. This is a real thing. Job seekers hoping to join the new Trump administration are facing a series of intense loyalty tests, with the White House screening teams fanning out to government agencies to check for Make America Great Again bona fides, okay? And carefully vetting applicants through their social media posts and through their politics. So this is under the directive of y'all's president. He says he believes that the biggest mistake made during his first term was hiring what he considered to be the wrong kinds of people. Now aides are working aggressively, excuse me, to ensure that the government is filled with only loyalists, okay? And so we see that in the representation that we have now, excuse me. So negative social media posts have been enough to derail applications. Those seeking jobs have been told they will have to prove their enthusiasm to enact Trump's agenda and have been asked when their moment of MAGA revelation occurred. This is what's on the application if you want to work under the Trump administration. Okay. One federal employee said that they briefly considered buying Trump's crypto meme coin in case the president team asked about their voting record. Jeez. So an application form on the Trump administration website, it says, so you can go to the website and look at it. I guess, for instance, it says things like, what part of the president Trump's campaign message is most appealing to you and why? This is a question on the application for a job as a federal worker under the Trump administration. What part of President Trump's campaign message is most appealing to you and why? Also, how did they support the 2024 election? Did you volunteer? Did you do fundraising, door knocking, phone calls? These are the questions on the application. And also, they have to submit a list of other social media handles, so I guess they can do the research. Y'all, this is what a federal worker has to answer to. Like, they have to pledge their allegiance to this president in order to be considered for a job, okay? Okay, so closing out, wrapping up, I'm gonna get back. Like I said, I'm going to circle back on a subject I was talking about last week. And I tried to tie in, I was going to go chapter for chapter and try to break it down. But I'm going to fall back. Number one, because I haven't gotten past chapter 2. And again, I'm talking about the book that I was reading excerpts from by author Stacey Patton, Spare the Kids. So I wasn't getting any, interaction. I wasn't getting any feedback. I mean, even one guest that I invited on ghosted me. So I just felt like maybe this topic is too sensitive for a lot of people. And I know this isn't a big platform, so there's not a lot of engagement as it is. But to me, this is a common thing. This is not like some small secretive thing. A lot of us know people who were spanked, and just we're all familiar with spanking. And so me reading this book and wanting to have a dialogue with those of you who listen and watch, well, just to get a perspective on what your thoughts of it, and then reading the stories chapter for chapter to see if your perspective changed. And so that was my intention, not to change your perspective, but to see, what if your thoughts change. So thank you for joining me on YouTube. Yeah, the topic of the book is Spare the Kids. And it asks basically, is whooping an American culture? And so she gets into the fact that, this is something, part of our culture that we didn't do when we came from the continent. We learned this through the behaviors of those who snatched us and forced us to submit by beating us. And we passed that along generation to generation to our kids. And she talks about how we rationalize that. And so The third chapter that I'm getting into, I don't have the book in front of me, I don't think, but the third chapter that I was getting into was going to start to talk about the history of whooping in the United States. And so I haven't gotten to that yet. But again, I wasn't getting enough feedback, so I'm not going to try to force it on you guys to have this conversation, but I don't want to just have it by myself. So maybe I'll pick back up on it. But I kind of wanted to just touch on it because to me, even though, again, this wasn't a subject matter that everybody was, like jumping on board to talk about, it was an affirmation. I got affirmations that this is what I was supposed to be talking about. For whatever reason, maybe just for my own personal development and growth, to build my knowledge base and understanding, just to get a different perspective, whatever. But it was more so for me. And some of those affirmations were, number one, when I first started on the book, I do follow Stacey Patton, again, that is the author. And so she would talk about spanking here and there. The book has been around since the pandemic. I think it came out in 2020. Could have been sooner, but around that time. And so she would, she talked about a whole lot of other things, a lot of the things that I talk about and more. Great writer. I love the way she writes about anything. And she has a Substack. So she talks about a lot of things. But the point I'm making is, so now this documentary comes out, The Reckoning, right? And so now she's talking about it more. And that's around the same time that I started talking about it. And she was referencing it because people were talking about Diddy's mom and how abusive she was. And so she went back to pushing back about how spanking is so bad and that, it causes people to be the way they are as men and women, that might shape and form how they treat other people or just move in the world. And so I was like, right, that's what I was saying, because when I was watching it, I thought about the book that I was already reading. And I thought about how he treated his mom. They said he even violated her. He hit her and called her out her name. And I'm just listening to all the stories of women that he allegedly abused. And I'm thinking, maybe this stemmed from the way his mom was. Maybe she was really an awful woman and he just had a disdain for women that he didn't realize he had. Like you could be a heterosexual male. You don't, just because a man might not like women doesn't mean he's gay. That's your business. But I'm just saying, you can hate something and still be loving on it, per se. You know what I'm saying? So I looked at it from that perspective, and that's what my takeaway from the book. But so she talked a lot about that in the first two chapters, how usually it's the single mom that's raising a child, and some of the excuses is, I did the best I could, and I was a single mom. And she talked about how, even with Tupac praising his mom having a drug addiction, it still didn't take, he still raised her up, even though, there was some abusive things that may have happened. Just, overall, just talking about, and she really, during this, like I said, I'm only 2 chapters in, she really honed in on women, Black women in particular, because this is a Black conversation. And so I kind of had some pushback from it because as I was reading, I felt like I was wagging my finger at the Black woman or making the Black woman the villain. Just reading that. And like I said, I haven't gotten there. I think my mind's going to change. The wheels are going to turn even more so, and it's going to unfold more. But that was my pushback. I was like, she's going a little hard on the Black woman, because they say, we beat our kids because we don't want them to go to prison, end up in prison. And then she brings up the fact that, okay, we can say that. But the reality is, again, having this culture of whooping comes from being enslaved, and that worked to keep us. They beat us, our parents beat us during slavery to keep us in line so that the master wouldn't get his hands on us. We weren't going to do them as bad as the master would do us. But then you take this tradition on and on and on through generations. And here we have even more Black men incarcerated now than we did during the late times of slavery in the 1800s, the late 1880s, 60s. So does it really make sense? And so that's where I was at with that. And I just said, that's where I was. But again, my affirmations was that she picked back up on it, the author, in reference to documentary. This is during the time I talked about it. And then I even opened up last week talking about culture, because we're talking about, is spanking in American culture? Is this something that we took from white people? And so I talked about culture and I touched on culture. And lo and behold, one of my favorite people that I listen to religiously 5 days a week, Karen Hunter, she's talking about culture this week. One of her shows, I want to say it was a Wednesday show or a Thursday show. It could have been anywhere, Tuesday, Wednesday, who knows? But she's talking about culture. So that was an affirmation to me that regardless of having this conversation publicly and with those who listen and view, I'm on the right path. And even talking about culture today, we talk about my mathematics, from the 5%ers, and when I talk about mathematics and the 5%er nation, the number 4 represent culture. Today, if you add 1 plus 3, which is the 13th of December, today is culture, represents culture. And so I want to get into that before we wrap it up. So I'm gonna go a little over my 90 minutes because I definitely wanted to get this in, but I'll skip over a few things. But I just wanted to say, those are my affirmations to keep going, to keep having this conversation. And that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to play a couple of clips that talk about culture, because we're not necessarily going to get into spanking, but we're going to get into culture again, because I was listening to a guy who had been trending, and he's an African man. His name is Frank Zanu. And he was having a conversation with a woman who was not of the African, she was not of the global majority. She was not a Black woman. And he was saying to her that Black Americans have no culture. And she was like, "What? Why would you say that?" Like, she didn't believe that. She was like, "What do you mean they don't have culture?" And so I'm going to play that clip. And then the guy was actually interviewed on the show this week talking about culture. And Dr. Daniel Black called in to give some pushback on his perspective of saying that Black people in America don't have any culture, because Karen was lit. She was very offended. And I get it, because I hate when people talk about my people. Like, I'm going to be on the defense, because I start the story from the beginning. When you start talking about Black people this, Black people that, start from the beginning. Ask us why. How did we get here? You can't just start right here and say, "Oh, we are who we are." No, this was webbed into, our who we are. Okay. Let's see. Back in the chat, and I do thank you for engaging me, Mr. Slick Sean. He said, "I'm torn on the topic. I think most kids don't require corporal punishment, but some kids absolutely need it." Yeah, that's the consensus overall. And again, I've seen it where some kids react better to just a look. They react more so to the disappointment of disappointing their family. And then some, maybe you can pop them once and you don't have that issue again. But if you're popping them more than once for the same issue, is popping them working? And she used the term hit. Because we say spanking because it sounds softer, maybe we say whooping because it sounds softer, but she says hit just to give you the visual of what's actually happening. We can't deny that that's not what's happening, even if you want to give it a different term. And then he goes on to add about Diddy. He said, "I think Diddy was shaped more by the culture of excess that was common in the hip hop during the 90s. Yeah. But I think, just thinking about men being raised by women, and seeing with my own eyes, in some homes where some women were very abusive to the men or the boys that they were raising. Could that shape how you perceive a woman? How did how you perceived her body in reference to protecting her, or not protecting her, or giving her value? You can know that it's wrong. You got to know it's wrong, but you don't have any regard. You just abuse her. Like, could having an abusive parent or abusive mom in this case, that's where we were at in the chapter, she focused on women. Could that have shaped his perception of how to treat women? Yeah. I know. Yeah. I'm sorry, because I forget your name. So I know you family, and I forget your name, and I apologize for that, but I know exactly who you are, too. And I appreciate you joining me in the chat. I just forget your name, so I'm just going by your handle, because that's the way my brain works sometimes. So chart it to my head and not my heart, please. So talking more about culture, I want to get into this conversation, because I think that's something we need to think about too. And do you guys think, do you agree that Black Americans don't have culture? I know people say that about Las Vegas, like Vegas don't have culture, because you go places like Chicago and, Detroit, and there's a sense of culture. And what does that mean? Like, do we not have festivals? Do we not have certain events that are geared towards Black people here, places to go eat and things to do? Because when I think about it, every year it's a whole event for a lot of us to get together and go to a free event that's funded by our state, city jazz events. It's free. That's cultural to me. We go to the park, we can bring our food, we can bring our cocktails, our blankets and chairs, and we can just sit back. We can sit back and relax. That's part of culture. We have events that are geared around Black people. We have the Martin Luther King parade. We have there's places we go. When my people come to town, we go in the Grits Cafe. That's a cultural thing for us to go into the Black community. Here I go with this thing again. Sorry, I got to turn this thing off and know how to do it. Let me see. Hide this, show this. and figure out how to turn this thing off. Oh no, it's just gonna keep doing this. Why does that do that to me? I'm just gonna skip over this. Forgive me for just one moment, you guys. While I try to fix this timer that likes to go on and on. Okay. So basically, yeah. So when people say Las Vegas has no culture, they're talking about Black people in particular. But I see there's all different type of cultures with their own culture here. I disagree with that. Maybe it's not the same everywhere we go, but we have our culture, and you guys let me know what you think. You think there's no culture here in Las Vegas, but overall, do you think that do Black people have their own culture here in the United States? And so that's the question I'm asking now. So hopefully that will stay there. Yeah. Yeah, you see Black influence all over the world. Thank you. Thank you. And that's why I got to play these clips before we get out of here. I got to play these clips. Yeah. It's impossible for people not to have culture, right? Culture is a way of life. It's the way we do things, right? And this man is saying that, basically because we'll say that a lot of things were taken from us. The ability to have several languages, have tribes, to know where we come from. But a lot of things we brought with us: the sweet potato, the yam, the braids, the weaving, and I'm talking about fabrics, the quilts, the foods. We might do it differently here. Even the dance. I always talk about how the twerk, and I think he mentioned that at some point in a different way. But when I see the certain movements we do, even the bonnet, I've seen people in formal ceremonies with something similar to what we wear to bed at night, and some people to the airport, the bonnet. People do that in formal settings on the continent of Africa. Like, there's so many things that we do, even our rituals, our taboos, they say they call it voodoo, the things that we bring here. It might look different. It might be subdued in a way. It might have been evolved, because that's what culture is too. Nothing actually stays the same. Even on the continent, there were different tribes, so they did things differently too. But as a culture, they probably did things the same as well. It's impossible for us not to have culture. We are the only culture creators on Earth. Again, I'm reading from you all in the chat. Thank you so much. On YouTube. And Black Americans are the most influential people on the planet. Yes, we're trendsetters. Whether we get credit for it or not, we are trendsetters. We are influential in the music, all this music, even country music, rock music, hip hop, people get mad when we take credit for it, but it's history. It's the truth. It's the truth. And we big ourselves up, just like we celebrate being Black, because we have been suppressed. We have been told that we are not that. We are ugly. Our noses are big and our skin is horrible. But meanwhile, everybody's mimicking us. They're getting shots and shit, okay, in their lips. He says they're the most influential people on the planet. There is not a continent where the youth aren't mimicking some part of what we've created. Yes, even the Asians are talking about K-pop. They let it be known that we are the ones that are influential. That K-pop is influenced by Black music, by our Black cultural music. Yeah. So yeah, we got culture. We definitely have culture. And I want to play these clips because I just think it's so thought-provoking listening to this. So again, this is Frank Zanuck. And again, this was something that was trending, but again, he was brought to the Karen Hunter show this week to have this conversation. And she was very confrontational. She wasn't with it. But so this is just a clip of him saying that this was the spark that lit the flame that brought him to the show, having this conversation with a white woman, saying that Black people do not have culture. So let me play that clip first. We won't spend too much more time here, but I got to get this in. I got to get it in. Okay. It's doing it again. I don't know if it's going to stop. Okay, let's see. And here is, and again, Frank Zanuck, you can find out more about him at the frankzanuckproject.com. It's called zanuckproject.com. He's an inspirational speaker, life coach, human development consultant on culture. And again, he's from the continent of Africa. And this is what he had to say. Let me try this again.
Yes, there is.
What is it?
Okay, hold on. Here we go.
But currently there's not an African American culture.
No.
Yes, there is.
What is it? Name 2 value systems in the African American culture.
Value system?
Yes. Name 2 taboos in the African American culture system. Name 2 traditions, by the way, in the African American culture system.
Okay, forget it. Name two customs in the African American culture. Look, I'm being serious.
No, but I mean, I'm thinking about
yes,
it.
there is no value for freedom if you don't understand what it is. The concept of free. You have to have a foundation on which it would balance when you ask for it. Civil rights, they give it to you. You have no culture. Nancy, you've been here, born here. Why would you be surprised if I say African Americans don't have a culture? What, twerking?
Then he brings up twerking. But he asked a question. He says, what are our taboos? Do we have any taboos? So he's saying that African Americans here in the United States don't have culture because we don't have taboos. Man, we have many taboos. We have many taboos. A lot of us don't believe in you guys can add to it too, but what are some of our taboos? I mean, we could be facetious and say step on your crack and break your mama's back, or don't split a pole. But yeah, you circle back if you split a pole. You other taboos are religious taboos, right? We don't really go into, we see it as being taboo to talk to the spirit world. Off the top of my head, so those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. Even when it comes to food, like don't sneeze with food in your mouth. There's so many different things, that can be considered, taboo that come from our culture. And you guys, let me know, what do you know as a Black person that culturally is taboo to us? And traditions, we don't have traditions. Like jumping the broom, that's a tradition. We created that culture because that's the Black American culture, because during slavery, we were not allowed to get married. So our symbolism to marriage was jumping the broom. And we still do that to this day. You see many Black people. I've been to wedding Black couples jumping the broom. You're not going to see that in the white community, Asian community, or whatnot. That is germane to the Black community, our traditions, the certain foods we eat, soul food, that is a tradition. And we know what that, consists of overall. That's the mac and cheese and the greens and the, maybe the ham hocks, the chicken and gravy and whatever else is included. But it's kind of like we all know what soul food is because those are our traditions. Our value systems, are you kidding me? Like, we were raised to be respectful. We are the most kind and respectful people. You'll even hear white people say, if you're ever in trouble, go find a Black woman, because a Black woman is going to protect you. We have a system of, listen, we don't put we hardly ever, we believe in keeping our parents at home. When they get old and sick, we don't go throw them at home. Traditionally, our value system says our parents stay home with us. We build on a house, we get a different house, we make room for our loved ones. You don't see that in certain other cultures more so. They'd be quick to put you in a home, let somebody else wipe your ass. So we have those things. So when he was saying that, I was just like, wow, and like you said, he's Chat Lives Matter says, oh, it's an African speaking English saying we have no culture. Right. He said, I wouldn't even answer the question. And the lady was trying, because she mentioned hip hop, and that's part of our culture. But, she isn't of the culture, but she could still recognize that, yes, there is a culture, but she was put on the spot and he was asking the right person. Okay. But Dr. Daniel Black, again, if you guys aren't familiar with him, oh my God, he's so uplifting. He has a lot of great books. Google him, Dr. Daniel Black. He has a lot of great books. He is a professor at Clark Atlanta. And I think he's been doing it for 20 years. I don't know how long he's been doing it, but he has a way of making you understand things that seem so unexplainable. He just breaks it down into layman's terms. And so he explained culture to this man. He called in, he just couldn't take it. He called in and gave his 2 cents on the subject. And I'm going to play his clip before we wrap it up, because I just want you to get a different a takeaway. Dr. Daniel Black called into the show, and this is what he had to say. And let me just start over.
Well, thank you. Good, very good.
So let me just start it over.
Brother Frank, how are you, my brother? Doing very well, thank you. Good, very good. I first want to say that I am on here to enjoy a beautiful exchange. I am not at all on here to attack or to in any way incite rebellion. I certainly believe in communication, as Karen does. I certainly believe in truth, like all three of us do. And, we all believe in integrity. And I think it could be helpful if I can just offer this possibility, right? I think what could really help this dialogue is that there's a premise here that I think is problematic. But I don't think it's yours, Mr. Frank. I think it's what people have taught in the world. And most of us have taken it because it's just what historians have said. And that premise is this. When Africans were enslaved in Africa and scattered around the world, everything, all their culture, I think you were saying this a minute ago, was stripped from them. That's the error. That's the error in this whole thing. Because a process cannot strip culture, the totality of culture, from a people. Culture sometimes is in the artifacts of what people have, but culture is also in the flesh. Anywhere a person goes, their culture goes with them. Pieces of that culture in the dance, it's in the body, in the language. We brought African languages to America because we spoke African languages in Africa. We were certainly denied speaking those languages after a while once we were enslaved. But those languages and the influences of those languages are still in our Black English tongues right now, right? So the premise here is that African people who were enslaved and taken from Africa lost all of Africa in the process of being enslaved. That's the error. Right? Much of the culture came with us. Then through transmutation and synthesis, we revised through some force and through some voluntary actions. We revised a lot of African culture in order that it could fit the context and the circumstances and the brutality under which we lived in this diasporic place, right? Called the Americas. So there's much culture here that came along with us, and there's much culture that we revised and gave birth to once we got here. For example, you get jazz music in America, but jazz has its roots in Africa. But the jazz itself is absolutely an American continuum, on the American continuum, on the American aesthetic continuum in terms of culture. You get gospel music in America. You don't get gospel music in Africa. What you get now is Christian music in Africa that white Christians have taken. But gospel music is a cultural regenerative act that happened in the Americas that has certainly found its way back to Africa. Even traditions like jumping the broom. When we as enslaved people wanted to get married, we created that ritual here. African people created that ritual as a part of African culture, as a means of creating a ritualized way whereby we could signify the validity of our own marriages and relationships. But that is particularly an African American cultural phenomenon, right? And so what I'm simply saying is I understood the premise of what you were saying, Mr. Frank, right? What most people misunderstand, though, is that we brought a culture with us and we modified and transmuted it once we arrived in this place called America.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, just enlightening. Okay. Just enlightening and just laying it down. But even after all that, this man who says that Black people here in America do not have any culture still stood on his business of saying that we do not have any culture here. Yeah. And so again, just tying this all together again, reading the book, and for those who are interested, it's called Spare the Kids, is whooping an American culture. If I'm paraphrasing that, because I don't have the book in front of me right now, but it's author Stacey Patton. I'll circle back on it because I did want to get into more of the Black woman, Black male upbringing conversation, because I wanted to talk about Joy-Ann Reid and Stephen A. Smith, how he's being paid to dog out our women, dog out Black people. And just the pushback from people who, not a lot of pushback, but people who are mad at 50 Cent for exposing Diddy, by way of tearing another Black man down. I wanted to get back into that conversation too, but I didn't want to read the chapter this week again because I didn't read it and I wasn't really sure if you guys are really that interested right now. But Dr. Daniel Black said that he spit all facts. He spit facts. Yeah. Chat Live Matters is saying that an FBA ADO is the current attempt toward specifically and stepping away from the generalization of Black, as if the details of our lineage is still does not matter. Listen, I think a lot of times we just focus on the wrong things, and it's just another way of dividing us. You know, when I think about the ADOS, they want to, but they have foundational black. Like if you got a drop of Jamaican blood, you're not. I mean, it's just too much. It's just too much because when, first of all, you have to remember, race is an invention. You know, white people will be quick to say, you know, y'all trying to take everything we inventions away from us. No, here's one invention you can definitely take credit for: race. Race was not always, race was a term, was invented by white people in the 1800s, and it was specifically done to divide and conquer. And they took it even further to even bring it into our community to even divide us, to where even after we were no longer enslaved, we accepted us as a race, as based on the color of our skin, and I guess where we were from. That we had the brown paper bag rule. So we were dogging our own people out about race because, again, the culture that we came from conditioned us to think that it was okay, that there was discrimination, and that we should judge people based on their color of their skin, because it's a lot of conditioning in there. So remember that race is a made up construct in itself. And again, it's very new. Back before race, people were identified based on where they were from, the region, the tribe, not their skin color. I mean, that's kind of crazy, don't you think? Very crazy, but that's where we're at. So when people are beefing about skin color and what part of the earth you came from that determines if you're black, like black was Asian, black was Italian, black was anybody that wasn't blonde hair and blue eyed in the United States. Those people were able to blend in at some point. And so they don't get the pressures that we get because we can't blend in. We, you know, unless you are a passing, what they call a passing black person, most of us cannot blend in. So we are seen off top. Okay. Those the Irish that are majority immigrant there, make up the majority population in New York, they blend in. Who's going to say, oh, that person must be Irish, unless they have red hair and blue eyes, I guess. But they're not even being targeted. They're people that are being targeted by ICE are brown skinned people. And you will hardly ever find an Irish person that is brown skinned. So it is what it is. But yeah, I had to get that off because I think that was important. Again, just affirmations to me in this conversation is that even though maybe people aren't ready to have this conversation, or maybe the platform is just, you know, yeah, I think if this was somebody else talking about it, I think it would be more engagement because some people have much, much larger platforms, and I get it. But I was, you know, it was affirmed for me that this is where I need to be talking about this. Also, even on my social media, when the memories come up, I had talked about the same subject, the same author, the same book in 2020. When I hadn't actually read the book cover to cover, I had just seen interviews, which prompted me to get the book, and I wanted to have this conversation at that time. So I did this around the same time, December 12th, around the same date in 2020, 5 years ago. So I'm circling back to it and not even realizing that I knew I had the conversation before, but I couldn't tell you what month or year. I knew it was during the pandemic, but I'm back at it without even realizing that I'm doing it around the same time I did 5 years ago. So it must be something for me to get out of this, if not anybody else. But I hope all of you got something out of this conversation today. I know I talked about a lot because I'm only here once a week. So I have a lot to say. I got a lot of stuff on my mind that I want to get off. And I know that, you know, you guys have a lot of things on your mind that you want to get off too. And I want to, you know, give you that opportunity to do so. But before we get out of here, let me go ahead and thank you all that engaged me for watching and chatting. Don't forget to subscribe, you guys, to my YouTube page at In Your Ear Radio. And tell a friend, share, and come back again. Again, I'm not going to be here next week, but thank you all. Okay, so that's it. In my mind, I was going to wrap this up in an hour. But I ain't say it because I already know. But much love and respect to all of you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Adios.